a more recent version of this question of language, you know, connecting with the world or not, is kind of what this poem plays with. It has to do with some old poems I've been reading, maybe mostly about 10 years ago. The question of what Auden calls the aerial poem or the Prospero poem. The Prospero poem engaging with the world, the aerial poem just obsessed with its own music and delighting in itself and sort of being of the air and utterly detached from our lesser human worlds. And where do we locate ourselves in that? The title is called Music and Suicide, which I stole from the book of poems. And it has an epigraph. To die at the opera by ingesting a hallucinatory opiate while listening to glorious music was the ideal of sentimental romantics. It's from William Atwood's The Parisian Worlds of Frédéric Chopin. The surfeit of signage in cities is stranger still in this city where stranger is cognate with foreigner, which is what I am, waking up over cafe in a cafe. Again, scrambling up the metro stairs, I found myself suddenly in the middle of a crowd, in the middle of things, where attempts at description bleed into macaronic babble, moribund abstraction, deadpan as pedestrian faces. It's no wonder the poems I find celebrated of late by younger poets in cities have little to say but sound, a nonchalance of nuance where words become sound and blur to surd. Music, I suppose, is at least a mode of order, a way of connecting counter to the bird-vanishing height of buildings, the gray noise of sandblasters on scaffolds, and the mass isolation of traffic where self seems no more than a word, and a word a cipher, meaningless by itself as a semiquaver. Or so they've been taught by their teachers, that the old Whitmanic I, who assumed responsibility for what he names, ferrying outward and back in the horse-meat brawl of his Manhattan, has been fragmented, webbed, or murdered. Or is it suicide? In Paris, in the 1840s, a society was founded, its members devoted to suicide, an exclusive artistic club. No one over 30, and only those refined enough to savor the tragic loneliness of an artist in the city. They'd theorize the means of crafting that supreme rejection, self-annihilation, but leaving no blemish on the body, for the gesture's beauty required an exquisite corpse, in frock coat and polished boots, perhaps, succumb to opium and delirious arias at the opera. It was all conceptual. Only one member resigned the club by actually doing himself in. Meanwhile, for those dullard citizens suffering their uninspired but unbearable pain, there hung a net of chains across the Zen to catch their bloated, fish-pocked bodies. Music and suicide, they're in vogue again. Here in this cafe, I try to piece myself together among screaming signs and silent faces, panoplies of fashions and pigeons strutting into my attention and gone. In this middle of this middle, I think I can grasp that longing for an ending, that final note. All these young Werthers, but cagier, they get the joke. He killed himself at his writing desk. Me, I'd rather risk quitting. All art aspires to the condition of music, as Pater famously said. that sort of aerial condition where you don't have to refer to anything. But what if you are a consummate jazz musician and you can improvise music and unite the mind and the body in such perfection? Then what does your art aspire to? I presume you know Django Reinhardt. It usually comes up when I teach, and I always have to tell my students, you must go out and, and listen to Django Reinhardt or Billie Holiday. A number of poems refer to Billie Holiday, and they don't know Billie Holiday. I'm like, okay, never mind what I'm here for. Go listen to Billie Holiday. Anyway, in the studio, 1949, Django Reinhardt is unsatisfied with the rhythm section. So he plays louder till it's mostly himself backing up Stéphane Grappelli on La Mer, whose violin's relishing that melody, all arabesque and sweetness, lofty and light and swirled as meringue. And when it's time for Django to take the lead and he hits that first high A, his finger, one of two on his left hand, not deformed and paralyzed when the candle kissed the celluloid flowers and the whole caravan swelled with flames, holds a perfect note, such attack and sustain, haloed with overtones, trembling with faint vibrato, as though he'd been born for no other purpose than that hand. The hand he'd fought the doctors not to amputate should find that note. 2 measures later, the melody calls for that note again, but it's not there. Instead, a weak glissando, mumbled slur across the frets, then slurred again. Is it that musician's trick to repeat the error, make it seem intended? Or is it a refusal? As though by denying the condition of music, he could tolerate the condition of history. In Paris during the war, musicians beat the time of curfew by staying inside the clubs and jamming till dawn. To fool the Nazis, they disguised the banned word blues as the French tristesse, sadness. Sometimes a regular customer hardly noticed until the night that he's not there, and never there again. And from time to time, stories of gypsies in prison camps who claimed to be Django, hoping it might save them. Later, of foreign papers reporting, from time to time, his death. Now, that haunting note behind him, Django aspires to the lowest notes on the neck, plays them surly and sullen against the beat, staccato strikes against the melody, hammers, digs his way down, through, improvise, solo.